Hello everybody, it's Father Bob Gross. It's Sunday evening. It's 5:19 on Sunday, October 22nd. And yes, I'm not in my clerics. I do have other clothes. So I wanted to share with you our third installment of our sermon series that we've been doing. We started it 2 weeks ago. And our first 2 weeks were asking the question of why be Catholic? And just a little bit of review, so we go into the third week this week. The first week, we answer the question, why be Catholic? And the number one reason why we're Catholic is we celebrate life, and our faith promises eternal life. So just think about it. The reason why you're sitting in the pews, the reason why you're listening to this homily, the reason why you pray, the reason why you read the scriptures is because we desire to live forever. None of us wants to die. And Jesus is the only one that can change that for us, transforming death from a final end to a doorway into eternal life. And that's why Jesus came. The wages of sin is death, and Jesus took on that death, conquered it, and now we live. That was the first week. The second week we looked at is, how do we even in this life that's mortal experience eternal life and divine life as we live our mortal lives? And Jesus gives us the gift of the 7 sacraments, those 7 special celebrations that span the span of our life, all help us to experience and to receive divine life. So when we separate ourselves from the sacraments, we're separating ourselves from divine life. That's why we have to stay close to the sacraments, especially the Eucharist, the source and summit of our faith. Today, though, I would like to look at the effect of being transformed by the sacraments. And that's our number 3 reason why we're Catholic. Why are we Catholic? Because our church has done the greatest good for the greatest length of time. But I first want to start with a story. You know, when I was in senior year of college, I did something really my parents were concerned about me, and that was I changed my major in the middle of my senior year. I was studying to be a high school history teacher, and in the middle of that senior year, before my student teaching, I decided to enter seminary. I always felt like I was called to be a priest, but let's be honest, I was scared to death to stand up in front of high schoolers every day. You know, I didn't think it through very well. Being a priest, you got to speak in front of people all the time. But with that, there's a second thing my parents were concerned about, and that was this, the time that I was entering seminary. Do you remember January of 2002? Well, let me help you remember. That was the month that I entered, and later that year, the Boston Globe unveiled the clerical abuse scandal that rocked our church from Boston to across the nation. And my mom and dad were asking me, why do you want to enter seminary now when the morale was at its lowest, when our pride in our Catholic faith was at the lowest as well? The Lord kind of shielded me from that. I'm glad he did. But that's an extreme case of how typically our Catholic faith is depicted in the media. If anything, it always depicts the church as always fighting each other. Traditionalists versus progressives. Those that like Latin, those that like Kumbaya. That divisions within the church. And I think it kind of blinds us from the good that our church does day in and day out that never makes the papers or never makes the news. And it all comes from what happens to us at Mass. And that's what I want to look at today in Why Be Catholic. Do you ever notice at the end of Mass that there are 4 options for the priest to use when it comes to that? Here are the 4. Go forth, the Mass is ended. Go in peace. Go and announce the gospel of the Lord. Go in peace, glorifying the Lord with your life. All 4 of those statements are commands. There's an exclamation point at the end of them. And what it comes down to is a fundamental belief that the Mass can change the world. And the Mass changes the world by changing us. And by changing us, we in turn can transform the world by sharing what we have received at the Mass. It kind of boils down to those two famous mottos of Mother Teresa, I thirst and you did it to me. That the Christian life is about satisfying the thirst of Jesus. When he was hanging on the cross, he said, I thirst. At the moment of his utter rejection by the world, Jesus wanted to love us. So one way of doing that is by satisfying his thirst, by loving the neighbors that are around us. You did it to me. Whenever we encounter another person, no matter who they are, where they're from, how much they make, how little they make, what race they are, what culture they come from, they are another Christ. And we are to love them, care for them, treat them as we would treat Christ. So in light of that, the Mass transforming us so that we can transform the world, I just want to offer a couple examples of how that's happened in our life. And the first is this. If it wasn't for our Catholic faith, our Catholic Church, we would not have the Bible. Think about that for a second. The Bible didn't drop out of heaven someday and plomped on the table, and there's my New American Bible with all my tabs. The Bible was given to us by the Church through discernment and prayer, and the bishops discerning which books should truly be in the Bible. Another reason that we should be cherishing the good that of our Catholic Church does is by the healthcare system. Without the Church, the healthcare system that we cherish would not be where it is today. In today's world, 26% of all healthcare is run by the Catholic Church. Just think about that. If we would close up all our hospitals, all our clinics, all our aids to those who are ill, I think the world would be in a lot of hurt. The good that is unseen by those who serve in our healthcare ministry. Or think about this, in the United States, 1 out of every 6 hospital bed is in a Catholic hospital. Powerful to take care of the sick, to take care of Jesus in the sick. Here's another example. For those that want to go to college, if it wasn't for the Catholic Church, we wouldn't have the university system. In the 1200s, in the High Middle Ages, the university system was sponsored by and supported by the Catholic Church. Oxford, Paris, Bologna, the search for truth and beauty and goodness, because of our faith, flourished because of our connection to the one that we love, the Lord, who wants us to discover the world that he made. Or think about this right now. Over 1.8 million students are educated by Catholic schools throughout the country. What happens if we would shut those doors tomorrow? The world would be in a lot of hurt. The good of educating, informing, and teaching the next generation. You don't see that on CNN. Here's another example. If it wasn't for the Catholic Church, the study of science would not have grown. If you didn't have university systems, then you wouldn't have people studying the natural world. Or an example, do you know that Father Gregor Mendel, the founder of modern genetics, was a priest? Or Nicholas Copernicus, who was the founder of the sun being the center of our solar system. He was a priest canon from Poland. Or think about it, without the university system, we wouldn't have had Newton or Darwin or Einstein. It's all because of our church supporting and sponsoring the search for truth. Here's one last thing. If it wasn't for the Catholic Church, there would be no memory of the ancient world. When the barbarian invasions were coming into Italy in the 4th, 5th, and 6th centuries, it was Benedictine monks and their monasteries who preserved and copied and faithfully handed down the scriptures and the knowledge of the ancient world. Aristotle, Plato, Homer, Virgil. And if it wasn't for that, the modern scientific investigations that we had would not have had the base, the foundation to grow from all that we gained in the ancient world. Those are just a couple of examples. I could talk about art, I could talk about the Renaissance. All of that was supported by and encouraged by our Catholic Church. Look at the good that happened, all by people being transformed by Jesus, and people then transforming the world to prepare it for the second coming of Jesus Christ. I just want to make one last disclaimer. Doesn't mean that the church isn't above sin. We are. We can sin and sin grievously. It doesn't mean that we're better than other people. But what we do have to remember is to celebrate the good that happens each day, day in and day out. One last example. I'm visiting a friend in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, and there's a homeless shelter at the parish that I'm staying at. Just think the good that no one will hear about tonight of homeless finding shelter on a rainy night in October. All of that because of what Jesus did for us and Jesus transforming us every time we encounter him in Mass. So let's celebrate that. Let's cherish that. Let's live that in our lives. So God bless you. Thanks for hearing, and hope you have a good day and a good night. And let's keep on praying for the Packers. They didn't win. God bless you, and thanks for listening. Peace.